Here. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining in this unprecedented time, I would say. So, wish I could be there in person, but this would just have to do for now. My title, "The Winds of Leadership: Who's Beneath Your Wings," is a personal journey, but I wanted to just kind of give you an insight. There are a lot of leadership techniques and things out there that speakers often talk about, but I want to take you on a personal journey, if that's okay today, kind of shift it up a bit to talk about the impact that leaders have and have had in my life. So when you look at this first slide, you see it's obviously a classic of the Wright brothers. And when I look at that picture, I can't help but thinking and wondering the impact that individuals who do not appear in that picture had on these men's lives. Much like the Wright brothers, there were certain individuals in my life that impacted me in ways that have changed my life forever. So in the next 4 to 5 hours, we're going to talk about what that looks like and what that looked like for me and the ripple effect that it had in my life. There's a quote, I love this quote: "Gifted leadership occurs when heart and head, feeling and thought meet. These are the two winds that allow a leader to soar." But before I get into that, I want to just introduce my family. I call it my wing team. It's important that that I mention them because they are the individuals that help me and continue to help me to soar. Here's a picture of my family. Obviously me, my son in the middle, my wife, and my son Michael Jr., my wife Latrice, and my daughter Janae. Now this is what happens when you blink. These are individuals who have, that bench has gotten a little small, I think, over the years, but nonetheless, they have been there for me, and they continue to just help me in my quest to be the best that I can be. My wife Latrice, she is worked at IWU for about 12 years. She actually started the Intercultural Student Service Department there, which is now called the Office of Intercultural Leadership and Engagement. In 2000, and now she owns her own company, a consulting company. She started that immediately after that, called Voice. And it's a diversity and leadership consulting firm that just provides leadership and guidance to companies who are trying to incorporate cultural competencies in their businesses. Michael Jr., they call him my clone. He is a 2017 IWU graduate, and he is currently in grad school at Fresno Pacific University, and he will graduate in May with a master's in sports administration. And he is also a grad assistant here at Indiana Wesleyan on the track team. He's a jumps coach. My daughter Janae is a senior at Purdue University. She will graduate in May as well with a degree in early childhood development, and she just got accepted yesterday into the doctoral program here at IWU. So she's pretty excited about that, and she's just kind of walking on the clouds here. Now, when I first met my wife, she was known to jump backwards over things with her eyes closed, and at some point she became very good at that, to the point where she became a national champion in high school and earned a scholarship to USC, and then ended up obviously ended at Azusa Pacific. One other thing she did was, again, that jumping led her to be an alternate on the 1988 Olympic team. And as you will see in these next couple of slides, she kind of taught my kids to jump high and backwards as well, and they became pretty good at that as well. My daughter was a 4-time Big Ten champion. My son was a 2-time national champion. And they have been very successful in their own right. Now, I mention them only because, again, like I said, everybody needs a wing team. Everybody has somebody in their life that helps them. and helps them navigate through life. And those are the support systems that I have there. When I think of leaders, I often think of navigators, those who really help keep individuals on a course and that propels them to success. So these are, and there are those, they create pathways and they help you understand what success looks like. So these navigators have a creative building block, and I like to think of it as everyone having a navigational system. In a system where, you know, like I said, someone guides you and hopefully they point you in the right direction. One of those systems looks like it's a flight champion. Flight champions really propel your thoughts and process things to new heights. And then there's the intuitive visionary. They allow you the capacity to see success through your gifts and your talents. Then there's the trailblazer. They provide tangible evidence of what that success looks like. So there's some individuals that I'm going to talk about in a minute, and they represent these critical elements in terms of the environment that they created for me to succeed. Back in the 1960s, the Los Angeles County underwent a beautification process in terms of their inner city neighborhoods. So they had the idea of planting some palm trees along the neighborhood and to really help them beautify the area. Now, Miss Minot, who is a kindergarten teacher in Los Angeles, and she taught at Virginia Road Elementary School, was one of those, they were one of the schools selected. So unbeknownst to these 5-year-old students, they embarked on their first experiential assignment, if you will. So Miss Minot prepared her class for the day, and she allowed them to study what the palm tree was all about. And she talked about the importance of planting the tree and what it took to grow and become strong, and just really what support system that needed to be strong and grow abundantly. And she said if properly cared for, the tree would grow tall and strong, upwards to 100 feet tall, and live life expectancy 100+ years. Now, given the state of the country during that time, Ms. Minot had this social awareness, because understanding these kids, if you look at this slide, most of them are African American or students of color. And she understood as students of color, and on the heels of the civil rights movement, she made it a point to continue this narrative of growing and planting and throughout that school year. Now, some of you might have already figured this out. Miss Minot was my flight champion. And if you look closer, you'll see that I'm there front and center. And for those of you who, I used to give this presentation in larger, I'm used to giving this presentation to a larger setting. So for those who were sitting in the back, there was a more closer look at that young man. This is Virginia Road School, my school that I attended as a youngster. This was the front of the school. This was the back of the school. And as you can see, palm trees line that street there. So 50 years ago, Reginald Amos and I, my best friend, planted that tree along that street. Now, in retrospect, over time, I came to realize that what Miss Minot was trying to get across to us, and I believe later that she clearly understood who her audience was, and the challenges and the challenging times that we were in terms of the civil rights movement. And so she made it a point to say over and over again to us, no matter what, where you plant a palm tree, if cared for, it would properly grow. And so she made a point again to tell us, no matter where you are planted, if you're giving opportunities, you will succeed. Obviously, I couldn't process all that as a 5-year-old, but since I went to junior high school and high school nearby, I would often pass by that school, and you can imagine how I would look at it with pride as it continued to grow. And it's easy to see the parallels between, what that tree represented in my life. Obviously, growing up in California, we had earthquakes and mudslides and fires. And anytime that would happen, I couldn't wait to get into the car and drive by the school to make sure that my tree was taken care of and no harm was done to that tree. As a brief overview, just quickly, of my family, as I said, just like the California had fires and floods and things like that, and trials that city went through. My life was the same way. This is me as a child. No, I'm not the one on the tall guy kid. I'm the one in the white short set. That's my brother James and my sister Cheryl. And we grew up. I was the youngest of 3, but there was domestic violence in my house that led to my parents divorcing at the age of 11. And I was angry at my dad for putting us in that situation, not sure what direction I was going to go, but somehow I had to, channel that anger for good, and I just didn't know how to do that. And as you can see this picture, we attended church every Sunday, but underneath the smiles and underneath the face, underneath those smiles, there was just anger, and there was fear and instability. And the fear was real, and it grew, and the fear grew, and the anger grew in me every passing day. So when you see this picture here, this is a picture of me, and it's not so much I'm frowning because the sun is in my eyes. It's the trauma, it's the anxiety that I felt living under those circumstances with my parents. And this is probably a year or maybe 6 months before the divorce. So I really had to really find a mechanism. I still understood what Ms. Minogue was saying, but I needed something, and that was maybe 3 or 4 years prior, but I needed something in my life to really help me deal with that. So my godmother told my wife a couple of years ago that we had to keep Michael in sports because he was so angry. He had to get some things out. And so football was that outlet. Football kind of kept me in check, so to speak. Where my other friends were going off and joining gangs, yes, at that age, or succumbing to other pressures of what awaits you at the inner city, I found myself walking on that railroad track to practice every day. I was not driven so much by a desire to be a professional athlete. I was just trying to figure out, how do I get out of this situation and make a better life for myself? Because the statistics in the inner city at that time for African-American young men was not great between the age of 17 and 24. Wasn't really promising. So coupled with the fact, with each passing day, I thought that I would somehow inherit my dad's violent behavior and go on that path. Now, a couple years later, after that particular picture was taken, my dad decided to take me to work with him. He worked in the warehouse for the county warehouse, but he also had a boss who worked high up in the company, and his name was Ken Kavaman. Ken Kavaman was, in fact, my intuitive visionary. Ken Kavaman worked at the, at the Wilshire district, and in that building behind him, he worked on the top floor. Worked on the top floor, and one day my dad took me up there. I went to his office. He had the corner office. He looked at me straight in the eye and said, "Hello, young man." Got up out of his chair, gestured me to come towards him, sat me in the chair, and he said to me, "You look good in that chair. Young man, I don't know what you're going to do, but I think whatever you're going to do, you're going to be great at it. And you look good in that chair." And as he turned me around to face the window, I looked at the skyline of Los Angeles. So that's the kind of view that I saw. And if you look down in the corner, there is that's the Wilshire district to the back. Little did I know, fast forward 12, maybe 15 years later, I found myself working at a law firm in downtown Los Angeles on 35th floor. I walk into the building, I open one of the offices, and I could actually see the building where I was looking at 12 years ago. What that said to me was, number one, God had a plan for me. Number two, all those instructions that Miss Minogue gave me started to fall into place. Continuing to nurture who I was, continuing to take lead from others who were trying to direct me. And it was something that really at that point stuck, and everything else kind of started falling into place for me. Mr. Kavaman convinced me that I could see myself as a success, and that I didn't have to settle for mediocrity. I want to introduce you to Dr. Milt Davis. This was the trailblazer that I talked about. He impacted me in ways that allowed me to just see tangible evidence of the journey. Now you have to understand, my first year of college was not a great one. It was actually, I was a freshman at San Diego State. And at the end of that year, I had a robust GPA of 0.95. And I can remember after finishing my master's, I somehow convinced myself to send away from my San Diego transcript. I'm married at the time, comes in the mail, and my wife, I'm opening up the transcript and I look at it, and it's got F, no credits, D minus, everything. And she looks at the letter and she says, "Wait a minute." She goes, "You got an F in African American Studies? How'd you get an F in African American Studies?" And so I said, "Well, look at that. I got an F in English. I speak English. I don't know." I didn't have the study skills. I didn't have the understand how to take notes. And it was really something that I had to learn, which I did. And that's where Milt Davis came into play. Milt Davis worked at LA City College. And he also went there as a student before moving on to other things. He actually was someone who was my mentor. He was the first African-American male that I saw that was multifaceted, not defined by one thing. And so it was almost like peeling an onion. There were so many layers to him that I was just fascinated by. The one he talked to me. Now I flunked biology in my freshman year. He taught biology. But when he got me into his class, he gave me the idea, he assumed my intelligence and not my ignorance. He talked to me like I was going somewhere. He gave me an understanding of a vision of what it meant to be successful. And that's obviously what leaders do. They set a path and they trailblaze for you that in ways that will allow you to see yourself in ways that you never imagined. That being said, Milt Davis went to UCLA. He happened to play football there and was on the team. He then went on to play for the Indianapolis Colts first, but he was drafted by the Detroit Lions. He actually was drafted by the Lions, but then once he got to camp, He was the only African American on the team at the time in the 50s. So the coach said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Davis, you can't play for us because we don't have another African American teammate to room with you when we go on the road. So we can't. So you'll have to leave." So he ended up leaving, going back to the signed with the Baltimore Colts, went to 2 NFL championships, won 2, led the league in interceptions, all pro, 5 years. Decided after 5 years he was done with football because he got tired of staying in separate hotels as his white counterparts. So those lessons were important to me, and he would he would just talk to me about those types of situations and allow me to understand the magnitude and the impact that they had on his life, but also how to handle such situations. So I went there and I actually played on the football team at LA City College. Ended up getting the last scholarship out of that program because LA City decided to discontinue their football team. But I went on to Fresno State on a scholarship, and then eventually signed with the Green Bay Packers, played receiver there. And those stories that I told you about Milt Davis in Detroit and all the things that he really talked to me about in terms of social justice issues, racism. Obviously, an African-American man going to Green Bay, he prepared me well for what was ahead, even though I didn't understand at the time really the impact of what that really meant. So again, this person was almost, as you can see, you talk about a true trailblazer, allowing me to see those steps and really taking me on a tangible journey of what that actually looked like. And eventually, I was able to walk in his footsteps and earn my doctorate as he did. He actually, once he left the Colts, he went back to UCLA to earn his doctorate in biology and health sciences. And so those are pieces as he never stopped believing in me. He never stopped mentoring me. And this was someone who really allowed me to blaze a trail, or he blazed that trail and allowed me to walk through that. So as I look at the areas of my life where there were people that have impacted me, each of these individuals had a navigational system for me that allowed me to move to that next level and become that palm tree that actually blossomed into into a person that can lead, but also has the ability to reach back and bring others along as well. I want to share with you this final piece. Jimmy Kirby, he could not imagine the strides that this world would take in the area of transportation. His world consisted of, he was a gentleman who was parents were born in slavery, and and he was probably born in the late 1800s, maybe 1870, 1880, and couldn't imagine what it would be like to maybe ride in a plane or anything like that. His mode of operation, his mode of transportation were buggies, and if that much. There was oppression. He couldn't imagine. People were telling him he wouldn't be able to do this, he wouldn't be able to do that, and to think about the future, his future, and then the environment that he grew up in, you wonder how could he even imagine success from his vantage point. But this man had a vision. He had a vision in terms of how he would want his future offspring to look through, what lens he wanted them to look through. So he actually began to think about that. But little did he know that the stories that he would tell of hope would one day impact his great grandson to the point where he would be able to fly around the moon and around the earth so many times. Jimmy Kirby and Robert Kirby are examples. Jimmy Kirby is an example of speaking through the generations and giving them hope. And as leaders, we often, that's what we're called to do, is to speak life into people and to give them hope and to give them understanding of who they are and help them to be comfortable with that. You know, there's a saying that attitude determines altitude. And in this particular case, Jimmy Kirby was inspirational in speaking to the next generation to a point where from one end of the spectrum of a buggy to space, all of those elements and all of those stories that he told his son, who then told his son and then told his son, would produce an astronaut. And as a side note, Jimmy Kirby is my great-great-great-great-grandfather, and that is my cousin Bobby, who now works and is an engineer at NASA in Baltimore, Maryland. So leaders must have a get-to attitude, a get-to mindset. They must recognize that they get to serve, they get to transform, they get to empower others, and they get to fulfill a calling, and they get to trailblaze, but also they get to pay it forward. So as you look at this, you know, you often want to think about who in your circle and your family needs that lift. What coworkers, what mentees are you training that might need that level of support, that might need to be that have that flight champion. Those are elements that, when you think about, you know, those next steps that you could take, that they could take. How are you coming alongside of those individuals to really help them and envision and give them a sense of hope? You know, it's the flight champion, it's the intuitive visionary, it's the trailblazers that really impact my life. I'm sure many of you possess those traits or have had individuals in your life who were those to you. So I challenge you every day. I challenge you and I challenge myself every day. And as I said earlier in one of the clips here, my coach often tells me, lead with your head on a swivel. And as I lead, I often look around to see who I can impact and who is in my life that I could learn from. And I'm always searching, I'm always looking to see who in that body of people that I come in contact with every day, who am I going to best impact and who is going to make me a better person. So I thank you for this time. I thank you. Hopefully what I've shared with you is helped in some way, but it also just helped you to think about you as leaders and the impact that you have. Someone's always watching, but also what most important to me is I'm always learning. So as leaders and as those who are engaged in many things throughout the year, it's important to always look to see how can I better myself, but also how can I lead better. And so just understanding that I am a flight champion, that I am an intuitive visionary, that I am a trailblazer allows me to look at life with a different perspective and one that provides hope and one that provides success to anybody who I come in contact with. So thank you for your time. And I'll just turn it back over to Jerry.
Hey, folks, it's been great. If you have questions for Michael, can you put them in the Q&A section, and then we can get those to him. Yeah. if someone would like to ask a question to Dr. Moffitt, Mary, Dr. Moffitt asks, do you have a personal mission statement or quote to live by?
Do I have a personal? Okay, yeah, wow. Well, I often quote, and I don't know where I got this from. I say, Lord, help me to see the hearts of men and women, then allow me to act according to your will. So that, and understanding what that says, you got to understand what you're asking, because I say that and I used to think, okay, he's just going to show me all the good things that person's about. It is seeing the other sides that really challenges you as a leader, to really say, okay, now that you've seen that side, how then will you move forward? And so that's something that keeps perspective in terms of how I deal with people on a regular basis. I see the good, I see the bad, but I still have to maintain that level of understanding that they are human and that they're fallible and that I'm fallible, and that I have to meet them just where they are and move forward in that direction.
Natalie Ocean Canty, our great friend, now from North Carolina, asks, which authors do you read on leadership?
Oh, wow. Oh, man, I obviously there is, gosh, Maxwell's obviously one that stands out. Norcrest is another that stands out. Boy, there's a number of them that I think, Ross, and yeah, I'm always reading. I'm always looking to see, which ones impact me the most. So, but Maxwell he gives me a lot to go on.
Our good friend Buck Rogers asks, on your worst day of your football career, what stopped you from throwing in the towel?
Wow. I think the journey stopped me. I think the kid that you saw, the clip that you saw, the number 17 at 11 years old, that picture, I used to keep that picture because it represented more than sports, but it represented where I came from in terms of what I had to endure. And when I finally made it to the highest level, there was a greater appreciation of the journey. So in the days when I broke my hand, broke my jaw, broke my thumb, what kept me coming back is the determination that if I could, I helped take a quote, but if I could make it there, I could make it anywhere. I think football represented one of the toughest times in my life, but I think because of the journey that came along, that life brought me in the process of going through that journey, it developed tough skin, but it also developed a sense of drive and grit, as you say. So I could take on anything in life after dealing with that.
Jesus Rosario asks, how do you serve someone with a closed mindset, someone that is very negative?
That's a good question. I think you first try and look at all the attributes that person brings to the table and really accentuate those and understand where they are and try to understand where they're coming from and try to understand how they got there and probing them and helping and really getting to know where that's coming from, because it's all coming from somewhere. And I think if you take it to that level in terms of really getting to know that person, I think you'll start to uncover some of the things that they're exhibiting on the surface. So just digging deep into and really having conversations, really getting to know and trying to build relationships, even if it takes outside, if it's in a work area, even outside of that. So that's just going to take some effort. And I feel that that's just that's the approach that I use.
Question from Gwen Rupert says, what is your morning routine and how do you prepare your mindset for each day?
I first wake up, obviously, you know, I do my devotions. I really just, I try and send that really centers me. It really, my faith really centers, it's the center of what I do. Then I go to the gym. At least the last 2 weeks, I've been going to the basement. But really trying to understand and really understanding, you know, having understanding of, okay, this is a clean slate today. What is it that I need to do? What is it that I need to prepare for? How to prepare my mind for those situations that are unexpected, and a lot of them are unexpected in terms of my day-to-day. I do a lot of speaking. I do a lot of engaging with corporations and businesses, and so I don't know from one day to the other what that's going to look like, but I have to stay positive, and I have to think of every person as an opportunity, not to succeed, but to really engage and to have a better understanding of what role I will play in that person's life today, and vice versa.
Awesome. That's great, Michael. Hey, it's Rob, buddy. Good to see you, man.
Good to see you.
Hey, the next question is from Lisa Mongovan. And her question is, what feedback do you have for Fort Wayne residents on how to welcome new residents like you and your family so they feel welcome and appreciated and don't want to relocate to another city?
Wow. Hospitality. That is, boy, that's a good question. I think it's just, you know, there's a lost art of communicating. I believe that's in getting to know someone. It's funny you mentioned that, because that same question was asked in a meeting a couple of weeks ago about how do we get people here to Marion in terms of even jobs or things like that. And I thought about this, having a hospitality committee just for candidates or people who are even interested in the campus. You know, when they first come to campus, there's a committee that meets with them, or just takes them out to IHOP, or takes them out to well, if you're going to Fort Wayne, Smoky Bones, or these other barbecue places that GR and I usually go to. Just really, again, it kind of goes back to that last question. Really finding out what they are and who they are, but also giving them a realization of, okay, this is Fort Wayne or this is Marion. Here's some things here's some things to expect, whether they're good or challenging. Not hiding what those are, but then actually helping them understand how you managed and how you're managing to get through those, and why you're here, and give them your story as well. It's a good end of that.
That's great. Yeah, I like that. So you're talking about transparency. I mean, just be open up front with the good, the bad, the ugly, and then how to navigate through that and make this a positive experience.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Hey, Michael, next question is, how are you different in raising your children from your father?
Wow. And my dad was, and my dad is, he was a disciplinarian. Now, he did the best he could based on what his dad did with him. I think the difference, how I'm different is I allow, my dad was, this is it. This way or the highway. And you just did it. You didn't ask questions. You didn't ask why. I allow my young man and young lady, my son and daughter, they're very inquisitive. They're always asking questions. They're very independent. And so I try and help them understand, and I allow them to ask their own questions. As the dean here some years ago, I wouldn't bring my work home, but I would often bring scenarios home to them when they were, 7, 8 years old. And I said, I had to let a student go today. Or I'm dealing with this student. Tell me what you think. And, my daughter at 5 years old, she would say, first of all, the most important question was, boy or girl? which one is it? But what I did, I allowed them to be a part of a creative process, a critical thinking process that allowed them to take ownership of their problems and also their concerns. And I loved them to death. They knew that they could come to me with anything and understand that I would not berate them. I would obviously discipline them with love, but it was not with this harsh stick of you're bad and these are the consequences of that. So it's a different approach. I believe my dad did the best he could, but I think I learned how to be forgiving, and I also learned how to love them unconditionally in a way that hopefully they can duplicate that in their lives.
Love that. Beautiful.
Any other questions out there? Oh,
Here they come, Jerry. We've got one from Jean Azer. Hey, hi, Jean. Good to see you. Let's see. It says, do you have any tips for what we, as leaders of organizations, small businesses, families, should be doing now to recoup from the COVID pandemic? There's one for you, Michael.
Okay, well, there's a lot there. I think I think we can be a calming spirit in this.
Good.
In the midst of chaos, because I have to turn off the news at some point because they have that ticker of more cases and deaths and things like that. I think that can take away from really how we lead. Obviously leading by examples. Now there are people that are losing jobs or losing their businesses.
Yeah.
But I think there's some comfort in understanding that, at least for me, how it's an opportunity for me to really, if you can minister or really counsel or really help them understand, look for the silver lining, look for ways to get through this in terms of being positive. What is it that we have right in front of us? And then how can we help others do this? Obviously in a safe way. There's a situation where there's volunteers that are going to be going out today to hand out food. What can we be doing along those lines to help others that may be in a dire situation? So lending a hand as much as we can and as safely as we can, obviously understanding the circumstances.
Perfect. Well, she responded by saying, amen, brother. Good word.
All right.
Jesus asks again, how, with so many changes throughout the decades, what is one or more pieces of advice that you would give boys and young men growing up in our current age?
Respect. Respect yourself, respect others, respect women. I even hate to even remind young men of that, but that's a lost art as well. Respect yourself, and show that unconditional love and understand. And if you don't have that, seek that. Seek someone, identify someone who you think exhibits that. And sometimes we got pride and ego. We let that get in the way. But humble yourself and learn. Those three mentors that I mentioned, they were put in my life for a reason, and I wanted to take full advantage of that. And there were days I didn't want to. I didn't want to hear advice. But man, it's the persistency. It's the willingness to be great or wanting to be great. And greatness comes from those who have come before us, and how we can become great by looking at examples that are in front of us.
Perfect. That's awesome, Michael. Thank you. We got another one from Mike Housen, and he says, so when did you learn your father did the best he could, and how did you reach that conclusion? That's huge, given the victim mentality many possess.
Well, I heard stories with my grandfather, and it was almost the same. It was history repeating itself. And so once I learned that, unfortunately, this is a sad statistics, but the Moffitts have been abusing their wives for probably 100 years, which is not, you know, it may be the norm in some areas, but I decided, understanding that, and I'll give you the key, Mike. The key was anytime my dad would physically abuse my mom, I would run in the closet or run under the bed or whatever. I was young. My mom would come out, find me. She would just be looking and face battered, and she'd look and she'd tell me, look me straight in the eye, say, Michael, this is not how you treat a woman. This is not how a marriage should be. And so at all of those weeds that were growing up, she was just pulling them out. And so that, Michael, helped me to understand what it is. And that's how I treat my wife differently. And my mentor, Milton Davis, one thing I learned from him, first thing, his quote was always, when you get a wife, kill her with kindness. And that's one thing I tried to take to this day.
Awesome.
Michael, Ron Lewis, our May presenter,
Yes,
has asked, how has football impacted your life and leadership?
Well, there's a never give up mentality of that. Ever since the age of 9 or 10, it allowed me to just persevere in the tough times. You know, I used to say when I first got that job downtown in LA, I worked in long hours, and someone said, "Man, you're just here." And I said, "Well, I could be on the field in practice getting my brains beat out." Physically, the physical part really helped me mentally, and it also allowed me to really look at it. And God has gifted me with talent, and I just thought making it to the NFL, that was a big deal. And so, but that confidence informed me. That informed me that, okay, you can do anything. So when I didn't think I had it to give in terms of education, he allowed me to get a degree, 2 degrees, 3 degrees. But I got that confidence because he allowed me to go from inner city of Los Angeles to Lambeau Field. So I said, if I can go there, I can go anywhere. So that's the mentality that I carried even into my professional life.
That's awesome. That's very good, brother. Okay, we have one from Sarah Arnold. She says, your presentation was so great, Michael. Thank you for sharing your journey. Could you explain your process for communicating with your mentors and mentees? And maybe it looks different for each person, but for example, touch base each month, ? Only call when you or they are going through a hard time? Ask the same questions each time you communicate, etc. What would your answer be on that, Michael?
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for the question. You know, it's all of those. It's everything that you just said. But I also make it a point to just send a text. I love technology because you can just send a text or an email just out of the blue. How's your day going? Hey, I was praying for you. Hey, I saw this online. How are you doing? Let's grab coffee. And then just to keep them engaged, I'll ask them questions. I'll get their perspective on something because it's a two-way street. And I'm always looking for, I'm always learning from my mentees as well. So
that's awesome. Thank you, brother.
Michael, Dave Cole asks, how much and what type of influence has your wife had on your philosophy? Be careful how you answer this.
My wife has had a tremendous influence. I've met her. We met in college. I was a super senior, and she was a freshman. So I said, and I always tell her, I said, you know what? There's something There's something to flunking out of school. Because if I hadn't flunked out of school, I wouldn't have been around that extra year to meet you. So, you know, I don't subscribe to that, but she has impacted me in a way. She is such a person who I met her when I first met her. I said, man, I got to get my act together here. And I told her, I said, if I'd have met you a year ago, you'd have passed me by before we met. She has provided me with such a renewing spirit. She's resilient. she, in her line of work, diversity, she teaches diversity and social justice, and does a great job of that. She meets people where they are, and she allows the process to happen organically. She's someone who will pray with you at a drop of a dime, but she is also someone who, man, just understands what to say at the right time. And that's just a gift that she has. And so I admire that about her. And she's someone who, really has impacted me tremendously.
That's a great answer. And I think it might keep you in the house tonight too, brother.
At least for another day.
At least for another day. Okay, we've got another question for you, brother, from Bill Hickle. My experiences are that it is very rare to find a leader who is gifted as a flight champion, intuitive visionary, and trailblazer all in one package. Leaders can oftentimes believe they can be all things to all people, but lead best when they know their own limitations and abilities. How do you encourage each of these individuals in their own flight champion, visionary, or trailblazer gifting?
Yes, good question, Bill. And you're right. It takes a. I think Milt Davis came close to encompassing all of those, but he will be the first to tell you that he is none of them. But I think, and that's just his humility. It's a great combination. And if you notice, each of the ones that I talked about possess those. I think each of those were their strengths. Now they probably had a little bit of all of the other ones, but each of those were their strength. I would encourage people, being a flight champion is someone just allowing, they're seeing an ability and really wanting to help you along. I think coming along someone, as mentors do, it's a natural progression to want to see the best and then want them to see that in them. And so setting their sights higher, and then that intuitive person, it's that person who just says, hey, I got a good feeling about you. I see some things. And they also see that a lot of these three, flight champion, intuitive visionary, and intuitive and trailblazer, they see those things in them and there are strengths within them. So they try and bring those out. So I would concentrate it. If someone feels like they're a flight champion, man, you're gonna know that. And so stick to those and also don't be afraid to defer to others, because I learn more by deferring, because I get a lot back from that.
Absolutely.
Michael, Lori Otis asks, what advice do you have for a new leader?
Hi, Lori. Good question. My advice for a new leader is be open. Be open to instruction. That sounds like, okay, that's an obvious answer, but it's not, because some of us try, we get these new positions and we think we've arrived, and you've arrived to a point, you just arrived to another level. You haven't arrived to the ultimate level. And I don't think that some of us think we've already arrived to that level, but there's always room for improvement. And so I would caution any leader who is there to make sure that you're surrounding yourselves with those who could continue to speak into your life. My mentors, some have passed away, but I've got mentors that are my age. I've got people that speak into my life that are half my age. I've got mentors that are 80. I've got Pearl Bassett here, who's 109 in town. She has her right mind, and she will tell me in a minute what she thinks. And I take it all in because she has perspective that I don't.
Absolutely. That's great. Charmaine Ward is asking, what leadership role, if any, do you play in your church home?
I think I'm the one, we often, it's funny because I've been at my church now for about 18 years. I mentor a lot of young men, and I have some of them over to the house. and I think I play that part. I'm probably, if I looked at any one of these, I played parts of a trailblazer. I played parts of a flight champion, um, and so that's the role I play because I see so much in some of them. It's scary, and I want to not do it for them, but I want them to learn the lessons that will help them. My prayer for my kids is, yeah, they're going to make mistakes, but Lord, don't let them make the mistake that is just devastating, but to where they can't come back from. And so trying to really help young men along is vital, but also helping them to learn those lessons in almost like a laboratory type setting, and almost helping them and training them to be all that they can be and want to accomplish in life.
Absolutely great. Thank you, brother.
Sean Hambrick asks, while in the NFL, who was your greatest influence in your life?
Oh, wow. NFL. There was a man, and I think he's in Georgia right now, Ezra Johnson. He was a lineman with the Packers. And Ezra just had that demeanor about him. And I thought at the time, he was an older player. Yeah, all of 34. And I was a rookie. He just would just give me little nuggets of advice and didn't say a lot. I just watched him, how he performed, just not only on the football field, but out in the community as a community-minded person. Ezra just walked in integrity, and he probably, he gave you the impression, he felt like he was like this 50, 60-year-old, 70-year-old guy, playing in a 30-year-old body. But he just walked, he walked and he played the part, and he is just what I needed to understand what it meant to be a professional in the NFL.
Awesome. Thank you, brother. Fatima Washington asks, when talking about your children, it seems they are feisty go-getters. What nuggets do you remind them of when they are experiencing moments when they need inspiration and direction?
Yeah. Well, they are me. They are my wife. They are, and but they also have their own personality. I always help them, and they will tell you all the quotes that I have. Obviously keeping your head on the swivel is one of the ones that my coach coached me up on. Looking at opportunities and looking at challenges as opportunities. When they get at a crossroads, I always ask them, okay, what is God trying to tell you? What lessons are you? What does he want you to learn from all of this? And really help them to understand it's bigger than that they are. What is the full lesson that's that he's trying to teach you? And then it allows them to kind of start thinking about ways in which they can get to that next level and steps that they need to take to get to that next level.
That's great. Thanks, Michael.
From the chat room, our good friend, Pastor Wallace Butts asks, in the past, when you had to make a shift in your mindset, like going from bad student to good, how do you prepare mentally, and how has it changed you over the years?
Oh, wow. Yeah, at my lowest point, the 0.95 years, GPA-wise, that was a sticking point. And I think you can imagine your mom coming to pick you up from San Diego State as a freshman, and it's about an hour and a half drive from San Diego to LA. And, she's driving, and all of a sudden, she glances over at you and then turns back and doesn't say anything to you. That's motivation enough. Number one, I thought, okay, I think it will be less painful to just tell her to speed up and, jump out the car, open the door and jump out the car. What I took from that was, my mom said, you have the ability. I don't know if the desire is there yet, but you have the ability. You have to be passionate about wanting to be better. And she knew that in me from other, she saw those, she had those flight champion nuggets that she saw. And so understanding, I didn't want to disappoint her, but understanding that there was something better, there was something greater that I needed to do in life, allowed me to pick myself up, because I went back to my neighborhood and I saw Gary Johnson, who was an All-American football player who got involved in drugs, and now he limited himself to cutting grass in the neighborhood. So there were certain pieces that started to click for me, and that I needed to be better than that, or at least aspire to be something than that. And then Gary Johnson, who was cutting grass, would often come over and who taught me how to catch and tell me, you're better than that. So there were people who had failed in terms of their life that were speaking into my life. The man who had alcohol issues was my next door neighbor with no teeth at 34 years old, would come in and sit next to me and say, you don't want this. So there were elements, there were people speaking into my life. It's not always the leader that sits in the CEO's office. These are, I think, in a crazy type of way, they led me out of, from their path, and they led me from their perspective. So that was an interesting dichotomy there.
Absolutely. Great perspective. Thank you.
Well, Michael, you have answered 24, maybe 25 questions. So, wow. Hey, ooh, wow. Hey, that looks like a TikTok dance. I don't know.
Not here in Westland, no.
Yeah, good point. But hey, thanks everybody for joining us today. Our prayer from First Fridays is that wherever you're at, that you will stay safe, you will stay healthy, and that everything in your life and your family will go well. So on behalf of Michael and the First Fridays team, have a blessed weekend, and we'll see you in May with Dr. Ron Lewis. Have a great day, everyone.
God bless everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.